time. It's unstoppable. It's inevitable. And now, it's on the side of Raider Nation. A steady movement of the hands. Every tick. Driving forward. Each second. Closer to the future. Time to build. Time to lead. Time to look ahead to those who will challenge us. Our history is rich. Our future is bright. Our time is coming. Our time is coming. It's time. It's time. It's time. The Raiders are coming.
This is Fox 5's Raiders season preview.
Thanks for joining us for our Raiders season preview special. Kevin Bolinger alongside Vince Sapienza and our very special guest, former Raider great, current radio analyst Lincoln Kennedy. Thanks for being out here.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Kev, we get fired up to talk football all the time, but when we're sitting on the same set as a living legend, 11 seasons in the NFL, 8 with the silver and black, college football Hall of Famer, All-Pro, Pro Bowler, Link, are you fired up?
I'm fired up. I mean, that promo got me fired up. And we still got Sundays. This is one of the Sundays off that we don't have pro football, but it's coming. It's looking forward to it.
Yesterday, the big news, of course, was the cut down day, and a couple of big names for the Raiders let go. One of them, Las Vegas native, Cimarron High School graduate Brandon Marshall.
Right.
They made the decision to cut ties with the veteran. Any thoughts on why they decided to get rid of him?
You know, from what I perceived and what I watched with Brandon Marshall, he just really never took off, really never took a hold as part of that linebacker group. And more importantly, I think he was hampered maybe by some nagging injuries. Just never took the next step. But the Raiders had a very difficult decision, guys. They revamped this roster in a way to where they created so much depth when they had holes last season and previous seasons that they really had it was a good problem, but they had an overload of guys to choose from. And so this is one of those hard decisions I know they really didn't want to make, but they had to.
Good problems to have when you have too much talent, but one of the guys that everybody is scratching their heads, Keelan Doss. I mean, 2 months ago, nobody knew this guy's name. The Alameda local, all of a sudden, 5 weeks on Hard Knocks, he's being talked about every time Gruden goes to the podium. How big of a surprise was this to you, and how surprising is it given what the wide receiver room looks like for the Raiders?
It wasn't as big of a surprise as many people thought, because I think they were going to try to find a way to put him on practice squad. So, you had to release him and then go through all the things like that. But, the good thing for this young man is that and everybody knows this, when you come into training camp and you're known as one of those quote-unquote camp bodies, not a projected starter or something like that, you're auditioning for 32 teams, including the one that you're in. So, no doubt in my mind, if they're able to hide or find a way to bring Doss back, they will. But he's probably going to end up on another roster somewhere. And that's a great story in its own.
Wide receiver number 1, of course, is Antonio Brown, and it came with a whole lot of stuff going on with the feet and the helmet and everything else. Everything seems to be set aside and ready to go. He'll be on the field week 1.
Well, you guys are used to divas here in Vegas, right? And you got one of them on. You know what? Everyone's, including myself, is excited about the potential of 84. I think, Antonio Brown is one of those playmakers, guys, that in all honesty, will define Derek Carr's career as a Raider, franchise quarterback. If he comes on and does what he's capable of doing and what we've seen in the past, along with the leadership of Derek Carr and the coaching savvy of John Gruden, this could be big for the Raiders. Exciting offense that's going to generate a lot of points, and I think that's what everybody, including myself, is anticipating.
And I want to segue into those offensive starters. I want to show you the projected starters, and these, we call them specialists. For this segment, Lincoln, we're not going to call them the specialists of the offense, but here you have Antonio Brown, Josh Jacobs, the rookie, lining up at the running back, Tyrell Williams, another addition, Darren Waller, kind of an unproven guy at tight end, Alec Ingold, undrafted rookie, and then you got DC, and then you got the rookie Hunter Renfrow. Now, we want to show you a graphic of the offensive line, but there's been a lot of upheaval. There's been suspensions, there's been injuries, and there's been some cuts. What is your biggest takeaway from the offense, from the offensive line?
Well, Last year, Derek really struggled, and even though the numbers don't necessarily show it because the stats came out, last year it didn't have playmakers. They were really hampered by injuries and a number of other things. You look at that list of projected players, you're surrounded by talent. There really is no more excuse. It's time to show up and play. So they addressed the protection issue, the right tackle issue, by going out and getting Trenton Brown. That's a big deal. We do have, coming in the early part of the season, you have Incognito with the suspension, as well as Gabe Jackson hampering with injury. So that your 2 guards, you kind of have to cover up and make do for the first 2 weeks. That's good and bad because the first 2 games are conference games. You don't want to fall behind the conference, and they're going up against pretty good defenses. So that's a big hole that you have to fill. But, there's a lot of great stories on that offense, and the one that sticks out to me is fullback Alajengo, how he came on strong and really showcased his talents. And Keith Smith was a good one that they had to let go because you can't have 2 fullbacks. But Josh Jacobs, all those playmakers, I know Derek Carr is excited. I'm excited to be a part of it. I know you guys are excited to watch it.
We are fired up because we know a lot of the Raiders' fortune this season will be on the offensive side of the ball, and a lot of that's going to hinge on quarterback Derek Carr. What impact will Antonio Brown have, and why is he confident that this team has what it takes to make a playoff run? I recently sat down with Carr to get his thoughts on the upcoming season. With the injury you had 2 years ago, a lot of people say that it takes at least a full year to get through that. Where are you at health-wise, and is that completely behind you now?
Yeah, finally. This is the best I've ever felt in my life. Strongest I've ever been, the most conditioned I've ever been, leanest yet heaviest I've ever been. I spent a lot of time in the off-season knowing, I was healthy, I could do certain things in the weight room and stuff, and really just tried to crush that because, we're trying to win now. We want to win the Super Bowl now, so that way, when we do show up to Las Vegas, we're already the Super Bowl champs, and we're just trying to repeat.
You said you want to scramble more this year. What was it that made you think I've got to get out of the pocket here a little bit and give myself some more time?
I need to attack these defenses. I need to put pressure on them. For so long, I'm sitting there reading them. Okay, they're doing that, then I'll do this. And no, man, let's show up and make them stop us. Let's make them stop what we're really good at. And having more explosive runs, having more read option stuff, having more all that. Not let's do it. And because all it does is put more pressure on the play caller on defense. Certain coverages aren't so friendly in his mind, when he wants to do those kind of things. And so it's going to be my job to exploit those things.
Antonio Brown, how much of a difference maker is that on offense and for you as quarterback?
Oh my goodness. A guy like that draws attention, even if they're not trying to double him. The safeties, the linebackers, they have to know where he's at, right? They got to help their buddies. One-on-one coverage, he's shredded for the last 11, 12 years of his career, whatever it is, and he's special, right? He's freakishly talented, but if you follow his Instagram at all, you see a glimpse of how hard he works. You get to see just a small picture of what that is, and so when you get someone who's that talented, that works that hard, the recipe is always usually pretty good.
4-12 last year, not good enough for you, not good enough for anybody. What makes you confident that this team is going to be improved this year?
I mean, just we're improved in all assets, of our football team. When the 53-man roster happens, we're going to be cutting some starters. And when you're cutting really quality football players, that means the ones you're keeping are really quality football players. And that is a really good thing. So, the teams that I've been on that have felt like, hey man, we may have something here, this is one of them.
So let's talk Derek Carr. We touched on it briefly that he has some weapons now. This is a very important year for him, not only with the Raiders, but for his career.
I believe Derek Carr is the type of caliber quarterback, is a franchise quarterback. He can make every throw in the world, every throw on the field. He's charismatic. He's energy. Has a lot of energy, and the guys have rallied behind him. If you surround him and you protect him, surround him with weapons, which they've done, and you protect him, which they've addressed, I think he could be good, and I think he could be good in this league for a long time.
DC has talked about the end goal is always the Super Bowl, but to get to the Super Bowl, you got to get through the regular season. I want to show you, we're going to be going through the regular season, breaking down the Raiders' schedule, but first we're going to look at the first quarter. As you can see, there's real no easing into the season. Back-to-back divisional games at home, starting with Denver Monday night, followed by the Chiefs on a short week. The Raiders then hit the road for the first time in Week 3 at Minnesota before visiting the luckless Colts and Indy in Week 4. But Link, I know the one that really jumps out is that Week 1 Monday night prime time in Oakland against Denver.
Monday night, because you're going up against the Denver Broncos, Von Miller and Chubb, Bradley Chubb. So you look at that schedule, you're right, there's no easy. But there's one thing that we've always taken, and since I've known as a player, everyone gets up for the Raiders, no matter who you are. So there's no such thing as an easy win, even or easy team. It's going to be difficult. It really is. But we'll see if these problems, like with the offensive line, is addressed Week 1. It'll become apparent. You can ill afford to have to get off to a bad start because it's 2 divisional games. So there's a lot of pressure in that first game. You want to take it one at a time, but you're looking to win that first game.
Especially when you look at the schedule after that. I mean, you get 2 at home, but then you're essentially gone for 7-8 weeks before you come back to Oakland. They've got to get at least 1 out of these first 2 to get things rolling.
Yeah, we used to break it down in quadrants or quarters. You know, you'd have the first 4 quarters, you were looking at projecting your record. I look at have high expectations from this team, but it's not going to be easy because it's not an easy schedule.
Well, we're just getting started here with our Raiders 2019 season preview.
Up next, we take you where no one else can, inside the future home of the Raiders here in Las Vegas. We'll take you through the progress of Allegiant Stadium and what major milestones are coming next.
And we know you've been watching Hard Knocks, so what's going on behind the scenes as the crew follows the Raiders? We've got an inside look a little later in the show.
This is Fox 5's Raiders season preview.
Well, welcome back to the Raiders season preview show. At this time of year, the Silver and Black focus rests solely on the present. That's finding a way to win in the final season in Oakland. But there's a strong contingent here in Las Vegas getting the Raiders ready for their future. Allegiant Stadium will open in less than 12 months, and while all the anticipation builds for local football fans, the Raiders, well, they just build, baby.
It's big. That makes it complicated. It's expensive. That makes it extremely challenging. And in our particular case, the schedule is very unforgiving. We're trying to do about 4 years worth of work in a little over 3 years.
On the Las Vegas Strip, you don't see many clocks or windows. Just off the Strip, the window of time is closing quickly. And time is not on the side of Allegiant Stadium.
Those of us who are really close to the project, it's like aging. You look at yourself in the mirror, you don't really notice the difference day to day because you're looking so close and so often. But even going away for a weekend and coming back, you can see dramatic changes.
2 years in, the Raiders' new home is more than 50% complete. More than 50% of the $1.9 billion price tag spent. Don Webb, Chief Operating Officer for Allegiant Stadium, has been in the building business for more than 3 decades, and he says this is as big as it gets.
It's a legacy project. Frankly, I think that affects the quality of the workmanship, the harmony on the job site. Yeah, it's a tough project and there are a lot of tense moments, but fundamentally, there's a really unified effort knowing that we're doing something important and something that will be long-lasting.
There are 1,600 workers on site every day, and there'll be 2,000 before the project is done. That's 4,000 hands putting in more than 200,000 pieces of steel, tightening more than 480,000 structural bolts. The stadium is a complex structure, but to put it in perspective, there's enough steel in that bad boy to make 74 Boeing 747 airplanes. More than 1.1 million square feet of metal decking, that's 20 football fields worth. The roof canopy modules weigh more than 777,000 pounds, the same as 60 African elephants.
I don't know if the scale is crazy, but it's certainly pretty noticeable, all things considered fairly daunting. And it's not just the scale, it's the complexity and it's the precision with which that scale has to be pulled off. It's not just building a big stadium, it's building a big, elegant building that has to have really high tolerances in terms of its structure and high quality levels in terms of its performance, and that's challenging.
Now, before we turn the clock on the new year, we're going to see this turn into this as crews install the glass windows this month.
That really gives the building a lot of its character. The black, sleek, kind of sexy look that this building will have is driven largely by the glass exterior of this building.
When the stadium is complete, there's going to be a lot of things to like. Some you won't be able to see, just feel.
What we're constructing is not a building. What we're building are memories and experiences. This is simply a venue to host those. It's not just about how long the steel and the glass stay up and even about what the football scores will be. It will also be about a memory that some little child has. I really believe what we're doing is building future experiences, and that's an intergenerational thing. That will survive long after buildings go by the wayside.
All right, Link, you can breathe. There's not going to be a quiz.
Good, because I left my abacus in your office over there. So.
But as you can see, all the numbers, you see the scale, you see the complexity of this $1.9 billion stadium. You see it, do you get the itch like, man?
I get the itch to want to go out and play again. I mean, to be honest with you, I've traveled all around the world and I've seen some of these great magnanimous coliseums, and this is long overdue and looking very much forward to seeing.
When you have a crown jewel of a stadium for the NFL, what impact is that going to have down the road with free agents? Is that going to be a factor in deciding where they go? Does facilities play a part?
I'm not too big on thinking free agents really care about facilities. They care about money, obviously, and then the certain situation that they'll be walking into. But I do know this, it can't hurt to have something that people are attracted to that looks, that looks enticing and glamorous in that sense. So I think it adds to it. But I think in the NFL especially, free agents want to care about how much am I going to get paid, how likely am I going to start, and where's my family going to live. So those are things they think about.
We talked about before the show that the last time you actually got to visit the stadium was back in May. Obviously, yes. Completely different. Does it feel even more real to you every time you see the stadium? Because we talk to a lot of Raiders alumni, you talk about the move, but until you see the stadium and how close to completion it is, it's a different feeling.
The last couple of times I've come, I've stayed on the Strip, and then I open up the window and I see the stadium right there. And yes, it's becoming more and more of a reality every time I come. So high anticipation. I can't wait to see what it looks like, and more importantly, I can't wait to the first game here.
And for the Raiders organization, I mean, taking it a step further for where they're going, it's no secret that the Coliseum, they're the only NFL team that has had to share a stadium with a Major League Baseball team. Everybody's seen the infield dirt. To have their own facility is just a game changer from the organization.
No doubt. Back when I played, the infield dirt was my friend because those defensive linemen are on skates. But, it wasn't good for eccentrics and stuff like that, aesthetic. So I'm looking forward to seeing a complete stadium and a very nice one on the Vegas Strip.
All right, well, up next, we're going to take you inside Lincoln Kennedy's world.
We are off the field and in the Raiders radio booth. I'll give you an inside look at how Lincoln Las Vegas legend Brent Musburger see and call all the action on the air.
Plus, once a Raider, always a Raider. The alumni play an important part in this franchise, and a lot of it comes back to community involvement right here in Southern Nevada. That's coming up as the Raiders preview special rolls on.
This is Fox 5's Raiders season preview.
We've been talking a lot of offense, but now it's time to turn to the other side of the ball and talk defense, because this is where the Raiders have had some struggles. Only 13 sacks last year. They tried to get some upgrades. They feel that they've got that, especially up front.
No doubt about it. Going out in the draft and get Clean Farrell, a number 4 overall pick, was really big for them because they needed a 4-3 defensive end that could play every down. And I remember talking with Paul Gunther last year during the season. He's just like, I just don't have the guys to implement my defense. The big changes when the Khalil Mack trade happened, they were just empty. It was totally devoid. And then the injuries started stacking up. So they finally addressed that with the draft and free agency, and I think this defense is going to be a lot better. And more importantly, that secondary is really, with the addition of LaMarcus Joyner and the draft picks and other guys, Gary and Conley coming into his own, going to be really big.
I know this is a quarterback-driven league, but the offensive line moves that offense, and I don't want to take away.
Can't go forward without the guys up front, right?
But this Raiders team is really going to be defining the season in terms of wins and losses, how this defense performs. It's a young secondary, but it's an exciting secondary, starting with that rookie safety, Jonathan Abram. How big is that secondary going to be in terms of creating turnovers? I know the D-line feeds into that, but how big are the playmakers going to need to be this season?
One of the biggest nuisances against the Raiders team over the last couple of years has been the play of other teams' tight ends. Travis Kelce, and they've got a couple tall tight ends and with the Chargers. And you talk about the not being able to cover them because you had smaller safeties or just inept corner guys. LaMarcus Joyner is a big addition. And the fact is, you talk about Abram, a taller safety who can play that nickel corner as well, and the fact that he hits is going to send a message along with Carl Joseph. So I like the way this defense is leading. I like the versatility they have, especially in the secondary. I think it's going to be one of their strengths this year.
Let's look at the projected starters for the Raiders on the defense and give you a little closer look. They also had an upgrade with Vontaze Burfict at linebacker, and I think that's important because he's used to Paul Guenther's system.
Yes.
And if he's going to be the quarterback on that field, that's important to have a guy that understands what's going on.
Tahir Whitehead struggled last year playing middle linebacker because he just wasn't used to being the quarterback of the defense. Now you get to turn him loose with Burfict knowing the defense like the back of his hand. It's going to be a definite upgrade.
And again, just looking at the corners, Darryl Worley, Garyon Conley, I mean, those are two guys that need to have big seasons.
And I think they will. I mean, they came on strong at the end of last year, started playing particularly well, especially with the intangibles. Now, the big one that I want you to pay attention to, if you go back to that graphic, is look at the defensive end situation with Josh Morrow. That's going to be a big deal because right now they don't have a whole lot of pass rush. So Paul Guenther's system is he's going to bring heavy packages to try to create third and long situations to bring in Arden Key and guys like that. But I really appreciate the way Jonathan Hankins has come on. Justin Ellis, who's I think might have been starting on the unable to perform list with an injury, would be interesting. But they got depth at defensive tackle even after the cut. So I think it's a good thing. All
right, Link, I know I kind of quizzed you a little bit with the math. Now I'm going to ask you a riddle. What do you get when you combine a legendary franchise with a Las Vegas voice? How about Radio Gold? Or in this case, silver and black. The Raiders are as iconic a franchise as any in the NFL. Brent Musburger's voice is as iconic as any in broadcasting. The two let us in the booth to get a taste of the magic.
Welcome back to Glendale, Arizona, everybody. Alongside Lincoln Kennedy, I'm Brent Musburger, and this is going to be a big night. All hands on deck.
Brent Musburger has been talking football for nearly 6 decades.
Hand off again. They're staying right on the ground. Ground and pound.
An original member of the NFL Today show on CBS in 1973, Brent retired from broadcasting in 2017. However, that didn't last long.
Mark Davis came to me and asked if I was interested, and I gave it some thought, talked to my wife, and it's been a delight. Of course, when you work with people like John Gruden, it's pretty easy.
Carr back into the gun.
Now in his second season as the Raiders radio play-by-play man, Musburger says he's having as much fun behind the mic as he did in front of the camera.
And just on script. Cut back. First down. Just how Coach Gruden scripted it.
In some ways, a broadcaster truly enjoys radio more than doing television, because when you do television, to be perfectly honest, it is the truck that drives it because of the pictures and the graphics and everything that's going on. When you're doing radio, really you can wander around, and I'm blessed with having great crew.
And Jonathan has a chance, I think, Lincoln, to step up as one of the defensive leaders of this team.
No doubt he's already.
And that crew starts with his partner, Lincoln Kennedy.
He's my protector.
We'll see how it curtails to today's NFL.
He's my offensive line, you know? And it has been a delight working with Lincoln Kennedy. I covered him, actually, when he was a player.
Also getting Brent's back is his son and spotter, Scott. The two have been a team for more than 15 years.
Carr back into the gun. Jacobs, the running back, alongside. Carr fires complete to the right side. Touchdown, Raiders.
Well, it was drawn up perfectly
Signed
because
through the 2020 season, Musburger can't wait to call games at Allegiant Stadium in the city he calls home. But like Gruden and the rest of the Raiders, the focus for him is on the now.
People ask me what's the greatest event. I say, I hope it's the next one. You know, I'm always looking at the future and not the past. I've been blessed, I've been lucky, I've been around so many great things. But right now, I'm all about the Raiders and their next game. Let's get this show started. I'm fired up already.
Brent, you know, there's a saying, you're only as young as you feel. Brent's got to be, what, 15, 16? I mean, he is fired up. How much fun is it sharing a broadcast booth with that man?
I got to tell you, it's absolutely surreal, guys. I'm next to a broadcasting legend, and I'm still fairly new into the broadcasting game. So, but I really have to pinch myself at times. I'm like, I'm sitting next to Brent Musburger. I listened to him as a kid, watched him on CBS, and all the history that goes around it, but it's been a whole lot of fun.
Let's continue our look through the Raiders' schedule with games 5 through 8 on the board here. And yeah, the Raiders racking up some serious air miles on this one, starting with the London trip to take on Chicago, followed up with the bye week, and then it's cross-country again to Lambeau Field, heading south to Houston before returning to Oakland in Week 9 for their first true home game since Week 2. So let's focus in on that game in London. Everybody's going to call it the Khalil Mack game because it's the first time that they're going to go up against Khalil Mack. That's an important game for the Raiders, especially after their performance in London last year that didn't go the way they wanted it.
Certainly, but London has always been a constant juggle, guys, because there's an unfamiliarity of how to travel at such a great distance, how quickly to go. Last year, I think we left Thursday, got there Friday, which is typical for a road trip, but when you're going halfway across the world, it's a little bit harder. And so I think the team's play really reflected how tired or weary they were. So London is the biggest struggle. This year, we're going right after the Indianapolis game, so we'll be over there for a whole week. So hopefully the guys can get acclimated enough to put on a better performance.
Well, there is still one episode of Hard Knocks left this season.
Straight ahead, we are going behind the scenes of the HBO Behind the Scenes documentary. We'll show you how the Hard Knocks crew gets inside the huddle with the Raiders.
I can tell you, if the Raiders win this year's Super Bowl, we will certainly take a big hit.
Odds makers are weighing in on the Raiders' impact to local sports books. Coming up, we've got your future odds for the season and your Week 1 betting line against Denver.
This is Fox 5's Raiders season preview.
This entire training camp, HBO's Hard Knocks has been giving fans an inside look at what's going on with the Raiders both on and off the field. But what happens behind the scenes? Here's a closer look.
The autumn wind is a pirate, blustering in from sea.
Hard Knocks is a behind-the-scenes look at training camp. We go to a different team every year.
NFL Films embeds themselves with one of the 32 teams in the NFL, follows them as they go through the process of whittling down their 90-man roster to their 53-man roster and prepare for that NFL season. Wherever the players are, that's where our cameras are.
I want to practice with better etiquette.
Not many other shows out there have access to 5 to 8 players and coaches every single practice, or team meetings, or even on their off day, getting to know their families at home. So I think that's something that sets this show apart from other documentaries out there.
Hey, what's up, babe?
Did you oil up your arms before you came out here?
Sunscreen. It's just preventative. I'm a dad now. It hasn't really stuck out like, oh my gosh, they're here all the time. Like, get out of my face. It hasn't been like that at all.
All right, let's work.
Like, that's really cool. If I was a kid, man, and I was a fan of Derek Carr, number 4, man, I want to watch him practice, right? All of those Kobe videos of, him mic'd up and him playing a game, that is so cool to me.
Crew 4, you guys are with the linebackers. We have a staff of probably 35 people on location and probably another 35 people back in New Jersey.
In the position meeting rooms around the building, we have 13 robotic cameras strategically placed based on position groups that we're interested in, storylines that we think could develop throughout camp.
The other crew on that is going to be 5.
Our audience, we hope, is kind of all different people. Whether you like X's and O's or human interest stories, we try to make it much broader than just the typical football fan and make it something that everybody can enjoy. We always become fans of the team that we do Hard Knocks with. You want to see the people do well that you've been around for the past 6 or 7 weeks. So everyone at NFL Films will be cheering for the Raiders.
So everybody knows that the Raiders did not ask to be on Hard Knocks, that it was forced upon them. But in being up at training camp, it hasn't been as intrusive, I think, as a lot of people thought it would be in terms of the cameras up in everybody's grill all the time.
Ever since playing with the team, the Raiders have been a fiasco, and I've lived it. I've been there. So the fact that it's being documented is no different. It was interesting because there were a ton of cameras around, and you didn't know what was going to make the show or make the cutting room floor. So, but I've heard nothing but great things about it, and a lot of Raider fans, a lot of NFL fans were excited to see it.
Link, we've been talking to Raiders alumni saying, boy, we're glad the cameras weren't around back in our day. I want to ask you, is there a moment in any of your career that you're like, man, I wish that was on camera so we could relive it over and over?
No. Absolutely not. We want to keep everything in-house. No. I can't think of anything like that. I mean, I had a great time, and I'm still having a great time being around the team and doing the capacity in which I am, but I can't remember one of those. There's plenty of moments that you probably don't want to let out. So,
Let's continue our look at the schedule, where the back half starts with a Thursday night division game right here on Fox 5. It's in Oakland with the Chargers. Week 11, the Silver and Black host Cincinnati before heading back on the jet to face the Jets. And then it's the annual trip to Arrowhead on December 1st. All right, let's look at this Chargers game. That's always a big game on the schedule. Between the two, Thursday night in Oakland, that one's going to have a lot of juice to it.
Oh, absolutely. Every divisional game we've realized, and in time playing with Oakland and being with Oakland, everyone gets up for the Raiders. Everyone has their Raider week, whether it's Chargers, Chiefs, or Broncos. So this division is tough. And I think that's when you project the outcome of the season. That's what you have to look into, because you're not playing in an easy, quote unquote, easy division. You've got a lot of uphill fights for you.
Coaches all the time talk about, one game at a time, but you look at that Chargers game, which you can only see, by the way, right here on Fox on Thursday night. But you look at that game and you see it's the start of the back half of the season. As a player, are you looking at the game saying, regardless of whatever happened in the first half of the season, all right, this is our marker, this is where we can wipe the slate clean, good or bad, and move forward?
Not really looking at it like that. Again, players really and coaches take it one game at a time, because you can't take any team for granted. So you can't just assume you're going to win or lose. You got to go through the motions. So you don't look at your schedule like that. If you do, you get yourself in trouble, because you'll get nipped in the bud by somebody that you should anticipate winning or beating. They'll beat you.
Well, the Raiders lost one of their all-time greats just a few weeks ago.
Coming up, we look back at the incredible career and life of Cliff Branch.
Branch very involved in work with Raider alumni. We're going to show you what they do to make sure the community is served while maintaining the silver and black bond with generations of players.
This is Fox 5's Raiders season preview.
In early August, Raider Nation lost one of the best to ever wear the silver and black. Cliff Branch unexpectedly passed away in Arizona. The wide receiver played his entire career for the Raiders from 1972 to 1985. He was on all three Raiders Super Bowl champion teams in 1976, 1980, and 1983. Branch caught 501 career passes for more than 8,600 yards and 67 touchdowns. He averaged 17.3 yards per reception. When his playing career was over, Branch became one of the Raiders' biggest ambassadors, spending a lot of time in Las Vegas in the last 2 years as the franchise prepared for the move to Southern Nevada. Cliff Branch was 71 years old.
Branch was just one of the many Raider alumni that continue to represent the silver and black. But it's not just what they do on the field. Community is also the name of the game for Raider Nation, helping make the places they play better to live. That includes here in Southern Nevada, where we've seen countless alumni at events helping out local schools, sports programs, and public outreach programs. When you play for the Raiders, there's an expectation that you help out where and when needed. After you retire, it's more of a privilege. More than any other NFL team, the Raiders take care of their own, the players in the community where they play, living their charge of commitment to excellence on and off the field.
As far as the Raiders go, and Mark Davis and the whole Raider family, it's so much more than football. It's so much more than, what goes on the football field. They get in the community and they will change this town. I mean, it's already changing, obviously, but they're definitely going to come in here and put their mark, and, a lot of people are going to benefit from the love and what the Raiders do.
Now, Link, we've talked to Mark Davis, obviously, numerous times throughout the past couple months, and he says the same thing over and over. When you get the Raiders, you get an army, and it's not just the fans, it's not just the team, but it's a sense of community. How important was that instilled upon you as a player and even now as an alumni?
Extremely important. Proud to be alumni, proud to be a part of the Raiders organization. Ever since I came over to as a player, the first day Al Davis welcomed me with open arms. And once a Raider, always a Raider. So it's extremely important. And more importantly, the community values that the organization shares are important. And we want to extend it to Southern Nevada, as you guys mentioned, because now this whole thing is growing and getting much bigger.
It is getting much bigger, and it is only a year away from the Raiders playing here in Las Vegas. Here's a look at the final stretch of the regular season. for the Silver and Black. 2 home, 2 away, including the final game in Oakland. That happens December 15th against Jacksonville. The final 2 weeks come against their division, starting with LA and then finishing up in Denver. All right, if you look at this, we're going to focus in on that final game in Oakland. We thought maybe that Denver game last year was going to be the final one. It's going to be a raucous atmosphere to try and get the Raiders out in Oakland on a high note.
You know, in my history, I've noticed it doesn't matter where the Raiders are. They draw a crowd. The nation is going to come and support. They're going to be there. And you're right. It is going to be a credible environment. It might be a little bit of a heart tearjerker for Oakland standards, but it is going to be an emotional time. And hopefully the Raiders' record, they're pursuing something at that time and really fighting for something.
And you talk about an emotional time. You were just getting a little choked up. Just talking about it. It's okay, Lee. We got some time.
I appreciate it.
But that final game, you talk about getting geeked up for a game regardless of record. I mean, that's going to be a show regardless of what has happened or what will happen. I mean, that's going to be one to remember.
I don't know if the feeling is going to be really felt by this young guy, this young team, because they don't have a lot of the history that like I do, or a lot of people in the city of Oakland. But it is an emotional time because I think, for the most part, even this new roster, the turnover, they'll see by the time that last game comes around, they'll see the passion the city has and the Raider Nation has for the fan base has for it. It'll definitely come out.
Well, the man leading the charge is head coach John Gruden. He has a winning track record, and he has worked to change the culture of this Raiders team. I recently sat down with Gruden to get his feel for where things are right now. What's your comfort level with this team?
I got a comfort level with the quarterback. It starts there. I think we have a interesting receiving core that makes things very comfortable. We have a long way to go. We got a lot of new players at key positions on offense and defense, but I'm gaining more and more comfort. I'm sleeping better every night.
There is a little bit of comfort with the offense because you kind of know what you have there. There's a lot of question marks with the defense. Is that what keeps you up at night?
No, we have questions everywhere, honestly. We are building our football team. It's like that big, beautiful stadium down in Las Vegas. You know, it's going to be unbelievable when it's done. And I feel that way about our team. We added some young, exciting edge rushers. This Farrell kid, you'll like him, Max Crosby. And our secondary has been remodeled with Abram, LaMarcus Joyner. We're hoping Mullen and Conley and Worley, our young corners, can step up. We have a lot of questions to answer, but I like the guys a lot.
You drafted defensive heavy, but you also drafted guys that have won at every level until they get here to the NFL. How much of an impact have you seen from that before they get to camp with how much they're prepared and ready to go?
They've all come from good programs, I think. More than that, though, these guys that we drafted would play for nothing. You know, they're mad when I call off practice. This Foster Moreau kid from LSU, our tight end, he really likes to block. What tight ends in America like to block? You know, Hunter Renfrow, if you don't like Renfrow, you don't like people. We got a lot of guys that love to play, love to compete, and that's the image that I've always had about the Oakland Raiders. A team that'll play for nothing, will play doubleheaders if they're asked to, and we got to go on the road for 8 straight weeks this year and play in 3 different countries, so we better have guys with the right stuff.
You have the Hard Knocks crew out here. How much does that change? Does it change anything that you're doing during the preseason?
No, not really at all. They're professionals. We're professionals. We have to understand that we were selected for this show, and we want to give them an opportunity to do their job and showcase our players. We're proud of our players and the direction that we're heading. There's some things I say I regret, things I hope don't get on the show, but that comes with the territory.
Your TV background, though, in between the head coaching stints, does that help prepare you that you're understanding
Not
kind
really.
of what they're doing?
Nah, this is not TV out here. This is live practice. We're competing. We got guys fighting for jobs. We have guys competing for inches, and that sometimes brings out a side of you that no one should see. And unfortunately, they're going to see some of that. Hopefully, my language is much improved.
Raider Nation's getting a new capital city next year. The fans are already excited in Southern Mountain. What's the message to them?
Well, we thank them every year. You know, once you're a Raider, you're always a Raider. It's a proud franchise, and it's going to be painful to say goodbye to the locals here because they've been so loyal and so passionate. But I know they're always going to be with us.
You played for John Gruden during his first stint with the Raiders. Have you noticed any difference at all from
he's
him
still the
now?
same crazy. He's still the same crazy dude he always was. There's no doubt about it. It has not changed one bit. I mean, I talked with John in Winnipeg before the Green Bay game, and one of the things I looked at him and said, "Are you having fun?" And he's like, "I'm glad I'm back into this." Because, he did the TV thing, as you mentioned, and we know that, the little hiatus, but this was a man, and he still does, eat, sleeps, drinks, loves football. And he loves being a coach, and he loves this team. So I'm very proud of him, very happy to be a part of it.
Your partner, Brent Musburger, said one of the big reasons for getting back in the booth was to work with a guy like John Gruden. He's a player's coach. Yeah. He's fired up. Everybody gets excited. How contagious is that as a player, as a radio man?
I think it's absolutely essential, because if you're in that locker room, you want to have a coach you want to fight for, to lay everything on the line. And as a player playing under him, I took it upon myself to exude the type of passion to never let my teammates down, to be the utmost accountable. And then when we started winning, especially when we got successful, when Rich Gannon was in there, I told him, I don't care how I feel, I don't care what the situation, I need to be in there to protect my quarterback. And I tried to have that synonymously throughout the offensive line, so we kept Rich protected. We had some good runs back in the days.
I know one thing that drives Gruden nuts is how football has changed since the last time he was coaching. They can't practice with pads as much, and everything with the collective bargaining agreement that has changed. Is that the thing that drives you nuts when you watch football now?
What really drives me nuts is the particulars about this new CBA. This is your craft. You're paid a lot of money, but yet you can't go out there and, like, if you wanted to come up to, you were my coach. Hey, Kev, I need to work on this. Can I go take you out? No, because we've got a work hours restriction, or we can't do that. And I don't know how you can practice your craft or be good at your craft without doing it. I.e., a basketball player has to take free throws. If he doesn't have free throws, then you can't practice it. But a football player has to practice in pads, and you can't do that. You can't become conditioned. So now you're playing that juggle imperfection, and that's why the first part of the season is so essential. A lot of coaches in the National Football League guys are using those weeks to get their guys in game shape. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, you can start out in the hole.
You've seen that before.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, earlier in the show, we detailed the construction of the brand new Allegiant Stadium going up. What about the Raiders headquarters in Henderson?
We've got your update on that facility that will forge the success of the Silver and Black on Sundays. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
This is Fox 5's Raiders season preview.
Welcome back in. You are looking at drone footage of the Raiders practice facility and headquarters in Henderson. The site sits near St. Rose Parkway and Executive Airport Drive, standing just 15 miles away from Allegiant Stadium. The 320,000 square foot, 3-story facility will be home to 1.5 indoor artificial turf fields, 3 outdoor natural turf fields, a lap pool, training center, offices, and a production studio. It's also going to feature a cafe and a 175-seat theater used for players, personnel, and the public during certain times of the year. David Manica, who designed Allegiant Stadium, is also the architect of the practice facility, keeping consistency between the two Raider projects. Locally built by Richardson Construction, the stadium may get the headlines, but the Raiders say this facility will be where success is forged.
This is where they're going to come to work. That may be where they go to perform, but this is where they're going to come to work. And in an age of unrestricted free agency, sitting across the street, literally across the street, from a first-class executive airport, where a player and his agent could fly in on their Gulfstream and walk across the street to a truly first-class, state-of-the-art, scientifically based, outstanding training facility with a team that's really got it going for it. Oh, in a state that has no state income tax. This just might give the Raiders an edge.
The practice facility being funded solely by the Raiders. The Raiders broke ground in November. Staff say that the project should be completely finished by June of next year.
Well, when we look ahead to the 2019 season for the Raiders, we know expectations are sky high. Since the announcement of relocation to Las Vegas, Mark Davis has been consistent that the plan is to win a Super Bowl in Oakland. But with one season left, what are the odds? Let's take a look. In January, the Westgate Superbook gave the Silver and Black the third worst odds at 100-1 to win the Super Bowl, and the second worst odds in the AFC to win the conference at 50-1. Fast forward to today, thanks to a new look team, and according to odds makers, a lot of money pouring in on the Silver and Black. The Raiders are now in the middle of the pack, 16th best odds, 40-1 to win the Super Bowl, 9th best odds to win the conference at 20-1.
He's like telling me that I got it all wrong, and I might. I mean, they've actually looked pretty good this preseason, and I think they're making strides, but it's just such a tough division. Everybody in that division is really tough. They have a very, very difficult schedule. So I think the number 6 for 6 wins this year, I think it's a pretty accurate number. We don't need them to win the championship. Now, if they do, it's all fine and dandy, I'm going to tell you, but we will take a hit, and I'd probably have to raise the prices of the sandwiches or something.
Now, before we even think about Super Bowl, I'm going to put on my Gruden coach's hat and say it's one game at a time. In that first game on Monday night against Denver, the Raiders, as of now, 2-point favorites at home with the game total set at 43.5. So, Link, right now, the odds makers, the experts, have the Raiders at 6 wins for this season. How do you gauge their expectations with your own?
I have a little bit higher expectations. I think I'm anticipating the Raiders to double their win output, and maybe they had 4 last year, get to 8. And I think once you get to 8, there's a possibility of maybe winning a 9th and putting yourself in a wild card race. But I know I'm throwing a C note down on those odds. I just saw them. I was like, let me make sure I do something before I leave here today.
I mean, this is a team that's going to score more this year, we're anticipating, but also a defense that's going to, they may not be in the shootouts that we've had to see in the last few years.
But it's a hard division. Patrick Mahomes is going to be a future superstar for a long time to come. You know what you've got of Phillip Rivers and the Chargers. It's a very tough division. I think when you look at the Broncos, the start with Joe Flacco in addition there, he's a great game manager. He's not going to commit a lot of turnovers. They're going to run the ball and play defense. So the Raiders have got a real tremendous uphill, along with the non-conference schedule not being easy, playing the NFC North.
You know, Jay was joking about having to raise the price of sandwiches because of how much money is poured in on the Raiders. It's no surprise. I mean, they're an iconic franchise, internationally known, but what is poured in here in Vegas since the announcement of the relocation has been unlike anything they've ever seen. Knowing, I guess we'll call it support, as the money's pouring in on the Raiders, that's good business, good community, good economics being here in Vegas.
It's one of the reasons why everybody loves football, too. The factor that you want to go for a long shot. We've heard success stories in the past, players coming in, not players, but gamblers coming into Las Vegas and, getting a nice bet by putting down on a long shot. That's a good long shot. And, of course, being featured on Hard Knocks has added to the anticipation and the excitement around the Silver and Black.
So when fans start watching games here in weeks 1 and 2, what's the one thing that they should look for that maybe is going to give a glimpse into the Raiders' fortunes this year?
How fluid the offense flows. I believe in the first month of football, the defense has the better advantage because they're a little bit more sound. Offenses are still trying to get their sea legs, if you will, under them. So how well the offense flows is going to be a telltale sign for the Raiders' success.
And for you personally, enjoying this ride as the transition continues, how fulfilling is this for you who don the Silver and Black? Now you get to follow them and on their journey to what they always wanted in a new stadium.
This is easy, guys. It was much harder playing back in the days than this. I mean, looking at the facility, the potential facility. Look, I remember when we first got to Oakland in '96, we were in trailers. And at the side of the Alameda facility. Now, you guys have been over there. That whole place has been changed. And now you talk about what the potential we're going to have here in Henderson in the next year. This is easy. I love the ride.
Well, we thank you for taking the ride with us, Lincoln. It's been a great hour, and we hope you've given you a lot of knowledge. That is a wrap for our Raiders preview special. The season kicking off on Monday, September 9th in Oakland against the Denver Broncos.
Make sure to stay with Fox 5 for all your Silver and Black coverage from the Bay Area, here at home and beyond. Thanks for joining us. Have a great one.